I'm Greg Stevens, along with Mike Garofalo and Tim Fox, who's reporting from the U.S.-Mexico border today. In just a few minutes, we're going to welcome attorney and Victory News contributor John Graves. We're going to look a little deeper into the recent actions of the Biden administration and the federal government. But first, let's take a look at the latest headlines with Mike Garofalo. Mike.
All right. In Pittsburgh on Wednesday, President Joe Biden laid out his plan to invest in the country's infrastructure.
We have to move now. Because I'm convinced that if we act now, in 50 years, people are going to look back and say, this was the moment that America won the future. What I'm proposing is a one-time capital investment of roughly $2 trillion in America's future, spread largely over 8 years. It will generate historic job growth, historic economic growth, help businesses to compete internationally, create more revenue as well.
Joe Biden's proposal would gut the core of former President Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts. The corporate rate would jump to 28% from 21%, and a global minimum tax would be charged to prevent companies from avoiding taxes. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky called the plan a, quote, Trojan horse for tax hikes. Former President Donald Trump issued a statement about the bill saying the big winner would be China because U.S. jobs would move overseas due to higher taxes. Well, the left's push to expand mail-in and absentee voting has some members of its own party scratching their heads. Some Democrats, but mostly Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, have voiced major concerns about the expansive voting bill, otherwise known as the For the People Act, that is being pushed by the Biden administration. The For the People Act is about 800 pages or so, contains reforms such as changes to campaign finance laws, changes to redistricting rules, automatic voter registration, and ending gerrymandering and giving felons the right to vote. Well, still, not all Democrats are on board. Senator Manchin is saying that this bill may garner short-term benefits, but will inevitably only exacerbate the distrust that millions of Americans harbor against the U.S. government. Well, we've heard about the drug smuggling and the human smugglers. You're now going to see heartbreaking video of them in action. U.S. authorities released this video on Wednesday. Now, it shows two Ecuadorian children being helped over the border wall with Mexico and then abandoned by smugglers. You can see as the children are dropped over a 14-foot-high barrier along the U.S.-Mexico border. Border Patrol agents found the toddler and her 5-year-old sister. The kids were taken to a nearby Border Patrol station for a medical evaluation. Agents using special cameras found them when they spotted a person straddling the barrier near Santa Teresa, New Mexico. The video shows the person lowering the children one at a time before letting them drop to the ground below. Both children stood up as two people fled on the other side of that border wall. Greg, back to you.
Thanks, Mike. It's very disturbing to see that. You know, those of us that love children, and there you're seeing the humanity of this whole thing. Who drops a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old off in the middle of nowhere and takes off running? I want to go now to our southern border in Texas with Tim Fox. Tim, this morning when we were there, we had breaking news right as we were coming live with an arrest, and I know you have more information for us this afternoon. Tim?
Yeah, Greg, we were in Zavarra County, which is a few miles from here. We are actually in Eagle Pass right now. If you remember, I was talking about Highway 57, which runs from right here in Eagle Pass all the way to just south of San Antonio, that stretch of highway where a lot of human trafficking is going on. When we pulled up here at Eagle Pass, we encountered some Border Patrol agents and were able to talk to Raul Ortiz, who's the Deputy U.S. Border Patrol agent, number 2 in charge. Here's some things he had to say. Sir, give me your assessment. How serious is the situation here on our southern border?
Certainly, from a border security situation, anytime you have, resources that are stretched awfully thin, it is a concern for me. But I am confident that the Border Patrol and our interagency partners are doing everything we can to address these threats.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing?
there's a couple of things that we're facing right now that are certainly problematic for us. One is that we're dealing with an increase of traffic across the entire 2,000 miles of the border, not just in this sector, but in almost every sector that we operate in. Secondly, we're dealing with this during a pandemic. Certainly, our ability to detain and ensure that our workforce is safe and the migrant population that we're encountering is safe is thrown an extra wrench into the equation. And then, third, we're going through transition right now. And so we certainly have to ensure that we have the right policies in place to address and that we're coordinating with our Central American partners in Mexico. So these threats aren't making it all the way to the U.S. border, but they're being dealt with in other locations.
A lot of our viewers are people that love law enforcement. They love folks in uniform. How can we pray for the folks in uniform that are dealing with this thing every day?
Yeah, once again, I think, recognizing that you have almost 20,000 Border Patrol agents and fellow law enforcement National Guardsmen that are out here patrolling. These are folks that leave their families each and every day. 2 weeks ago, I lost an officer in the line of duty because he was out helping an elderly woman that was in a vehicle accident. Those are the things that we need prayers for. We need to make sure that the rest of America knows that when they're asleep at night, there are Border Patrol agents out there that are out on the front lines patrolling with little regard for their own safety and dealing with the population that they don't really know where they're coming from or what they're doing.
Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like what he said there at the end, Greg. And when you're asleep at night, if you're an American, you're sleeping at night, know that there are people on this border doing their job, and sometimes it's a dangerous job. I want to let you know that behind me, you may have noticed, is the Rio Grande. And on the other side of the Rio Grande, you can see people. That is Mexico on the other side there over my shoulder. So we are literally on the border. That is another country across that river, Greg, and a lot of them are trying to get over here.
Wow, Tim, thank you so much for your reporting there. He said listen to this, 500,000 encounters since the first of the year. We're today about 91 right now. That's a lot of people that they're encountering. They do need your prayers. A big move toward election integrity and peace of mind for voters in the state of Arizona. The Republican-controlled Senate announced on Wednesday it will be auditing Maricopa County's 2020 election results. In all, 4 firms have been hired to conduct the audit of the results of the recount of the 2.1 million votes that were cast. Back on March the 18th, the Senate announced it had ordered the audit, which would include testing voting machines, scanning ballots, looking for IT breaches, and performing a hand count. So we're going to be interested to see what happens there in Arizona. And now Texas lawmakers are taking steps to boost election integrity. Today, the state Senate passed a bill that would ban mail-in ballot drop boxes and most drive-in voting. The measure passed the Republican-controlled Senate 18-13 along party lines. The bill, which aims to standardize and clarify voting rules, now heads over to the state House of Representatives. The measure also calls for state leaders to be notified if any private funding of more than $1,000 is given to election departments. Let me bring John Graves in. He is an attorney and Victory News contributor. John, thank you so much for this. A lot of things to unpack. Joe Biden's spending spree, the mess at the border. Your thoughts?
To me, let's take them in reverse order. On the election integrity, I think you're going to see this continue to grow. It's actually good news if you believe in honest, fair elections where our citizens get to elect those who governs us, not other people, not fraud. And so you're seeing this in Arizona, as you reported. It's also happened in Georgia now where they're doing audits. Wisconsin just approved an audit and an investigation. I think it's going to just continue to grow. And a lot of the states where the real rights are starting to pass things that stop where the most fraud happens, which is mail-in ballots and drop boxes.
Right. John, in that we're not trying to overturn anything or change anything. We just want the truth to come out because then you know how to fix it. Correct?
Exactly. And it's not even just the truth coming out. What happened is they violated the Constitution that says states decide how to vote. In Pennsylvania alone, 300,000 people voted 4 days after the election was over. And that changed the election in these states. The Arizona report you just gave is 2.1 million people that are going to be audited. That state was decided by 10, 12,000 votes. And, it's too late now to go back and overturn it, but half the people in this country think it wasn't a legitimate election, and we need to find out. Both sides should want that. Joe Biden should want an investigation, an audit of this to prove if it was legitimate or not. And so I think it's, to me, a just scale is a great thing.
Yeah. One more thing before we go back to Mike Garofalo. The Biden process that he wants to do for infrastructure, only 5%, a little over 5% of that is going to infrastructure. It's all going to special projects again.
Exactly. It's the same thing that happened in the coronavirus relief package. It was called that, but less than 10% went to that. They're calling this infrastructure, and yet the majority of it's not even going to infrastructure. It's going to kind of pet projects on the left. The problem is elections have consequences, even when they're unfair elections, and the Democrats control all three branches, and so they'll be able to get something through, but that'll wake people up, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, while we're focusing on all of these things, the U.S. military is involved in another operation. Mike, can you give us the information on that, please?
That's right, Greg. The U.S. military zeroed in some assets of theirs on the Islamic State on Wednesday. Missiles were used to strike their forces in both Iraq and Syria. The Navy says the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group launched the attack from the eastern Mediterranean Sea. The effort is part of Operation Inherent Resolve. It came in response to the Islamic State taking responsibility for an attack this week at Palma, Mozambique. Bloomberg reported more than a dozen security vehicles were ambushed on Friday during an evacuation operation to rescue close to 200 foreign workers from a hotel there. Inherent Resolve aims to eliminate violent extremist organizations and the threat they pose to both the region and wider international community. Back to you, Greg.
Well, the governor of Wisconsin's statewide mask mandate has been struck down. The state Supreme Court on Wednesday said the Democrat Tony Evers' mask policy violates state law. In a 4-3 decision, the court called out Evers' move to unilaterally issue multiple emergency orders to extend the mandate for months. The justices said that Evers would have needed legislative approval to issue more orders after the expiration of the initial 60-day mandate. That initial mandate was issued in August, so it's hard to eat cheese curds with a mask on. Lawmakers in Tennessee are well on their way to making the Holy Bible the official state book of Tennessee. A resolution calling for such a move passed the State House of Representatives on Tuesday is now before the state Senate. According to ChristianHeadlines.com, the resolution, which passed 55-28, says the Bible has made a significant impact on the state's economy and aided in maintaining vital records. John Graves, I want to bring you back in on some of these stories. Rockets are flying again from the military in the Middle East, and mask mandate being struck down. I like the fact that the Supreme Court of Wisconsin said you have to go through the legislature on this, not with executive orders.
It's impressive news to me that the courts are standing up and holding up the rule of law. A lot of these governors became dictators when the COVID crisis happened, and they just overruled the legislature. And what the Supreme Court is saying there in Wisconsin is, hey, you can do that for a short term, and this happened in many states, not just Wisconsin, but you need the legislature to decide this. So again, the theme we're seeing here that's a positive, good thing is that a lot of these states are starting to stand up for the rights that they have, for freedom, that the government can't control us and willy-nilly decide how many people we can be around, what we wear, what we don't wear, where we go. And so this is good news, I think, for the country.
That's right. Individual liberty. It's called We the People.
That's right.
In America. Thought about the Bible being the official book of Tennessee. Now that's going to hit the courts, apparently.
Yeah, pretty impressive. The sad thing is there was a recent poll that was really stunning to me in a good way from Rasmussen that said 83% of the people believe the founding ideals are worth fighting for, but sadly the majority of people think that's not happening. Clearly our founders were founded on this, so it would be wonderful if more states did what Tennessee is doing and said, let's get back to God's Word, because if we don't have that, it's not the Constitution that makes us special. It's the foundation of a moral basis of our people.
Yeah, John, you're absolutely right, because it's the absolute that our society was founded upon. And if you don't have an absolute, it's like a river that just shifts whichever way it will go. Very good, very insightful, John. Mike, I want to throw this back to you with more of today's news, Mike.
Well, in his new memoir, pretty much he throws it out there. We're talking about the president's son, Hunter. Details his lifelong struggle with addiction and its impact on his life and his family. The book is filled with stories of Hunter Biden's struggle with addictions to alcohol as well as drugs. Hunter goes into shocking detail throughout the book, writing that in the last 5 years alone, my 2 decades-long marriage has dissolved, guns have been put in my face, and at one point I dropped clean off the grid, living in $59 a night Super 8 motels off I-95, while scaring my family even more than myself. In the book, Hunter Biden credits his second wife with his sobriety, along with the love from his father and his mother. And another memoir getting attention, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's. It was written back when he was getting high marks for how he was handling the coronavirus pandemic. Well, we now know with ongoing New York State nursing home death controversy, those reviews were written probably a little bit too reporting. The governor was offered at least $4 million to tell his story. The report also says Cuomo enlisted government staffers to help with that book. Now, those aides are said to include Melissa DeRosa and Stephanie Benton, as well as a number of junior staffers. The memoir, entitled American Crisis: Leadership Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic, was published in mid-October of last year. Greg, back to you.
All right, to go back to Tim Fox down at the southern border with the United States of Mexico. Tim?
As I mentioned, this is ride-along video from a previous arrest that they did there in Zavala County. Not what we had today, but this is dash cam video of one that they did a little bit earlier. And you can see pop open the trunk, there's people in that trunk. So that's the kind of thing that they witness every single day here in Zavala County. Now, probably the most moving thing we saw today, at 1 o'clock today, emergency vehicles all over the state of Texas lined up, and they ran their lights and stood for a moment of silence. For Texas Department of Public Safety Trooper Chad Walker, who lost his life earlier this week. He was shot last Friday responding to a motorist in distress. As you see, there's state troopers there who lost a brother this week. And Greg, it was really a sobering reminder of how serious and how dangerous the job is of those in law enforcement, Department of Public Safety, Border Patrol, Sheriff's Department. These folks need our support, and they certainly need our prayers. Greg,
right.
Back to you.
Thank you, Tim. They're the ones that run toward the gunfire. John Graves, I want to bring you in on all of these stories, but I also want you to ask you to say a prayer for that trooper and his family.
Yes, I'll be happy to. God, we just pray for Chad and his entire family and for all the officers that are serving. God, they truly are on the front lines. It may not be a military operation overseas, but it's protecting our borders. And you said in Acts 17 that you set all men and the nations in the boundaries of their times of existence. And so we ask that you'd protect all those 20,000 people that are working on our borders right now in the name of Jesus. You know, Greg, one of the things that hit me with all those stories is if you really have compassion for the poor, then you need to be concerned about these type of issues. If you really care about women and have an equal equality, where's the Me Too movement over the Como? 9 or 10 different people alleging that this man sexually assaulted them. There is a hypocrisy that's out there. And if we care about these people, we need to have compassion while not compromising the truth on all of these issues.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a good point. And he's profited on it when the staff couldn't be paid or compensated in any way on that. 500, what struck me today, John, was 500,000 encounters this year at the border. And we still have a lot of Christians that say, well, it's really not that bad. But 500,000?
And I'm glad you brought that back up. That's in Q1, the first quarter of the year. That's 2 million people, and it's increasing. It's climbing. It's catastrophic. It's a crisis. But what's more disturbing is over 5,000 people trying to commit crimes. And the report that came out last week that 80% of the women and children that are trying to cross the border are sexually assaulted in some form or another. To me, that is an absolute tragedy. We have to be a nation of laws. We have to be a nation of borders. You can have compassion for the poor or the foreigner living among you, but expect them to follow the laws like the rest of us follow the laws of our government, according to Romans 13. And so it's not an inconsistent position to have grace and truth.
Yeah, it is. We are a nation of laws. It's an excellent point. I want to thank Victory News contributor John Graves. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Good to be with you.
It's always an honor to have you with us.